obviously the biggest questions that have been going around is like all of the tariffs on cryptocurrency, miners in particular. And there was some talk surrounding, of course, the I guess the Trump administration's policy surrounding chip manufacturers and removing tariffs on things like cell phones, computers, graphics cards, chips like that, if that applied to Bitcoin mining. My understanding right now, as of right now, thanks to a short from Hawk Crypto Mining, is that is not applied to Bitcoin miners. And I have an article here from investing.com we're going to take a look at and see what they say. It does look like my audio is peaking a little bit, so let me bring that down just a little bit so that we aren't peaking on you guys. All right. There you go. Let me know if that works for you guys. Oh, audio is fine. Okay. Then let me just turn it back up. There we go. All right. Let's pop into the first article. What is the effect of U.S. tariffs on Bitcoin mining? Investing.com. The United States' reliance on Chinese manufacturers for Bitcoin mining equipment has made its mining industry particularly vulnerable to trade restrictions. According to Pat Zhang, head of research at WooX, Chinese firms control between 70 and 80% of the global ASIC hardware market, meaning a 25% tariff on mining equipment would have immediate financial consequences. This would increase the price of machines like the Antminer S19 by approximately $1,250 per unit, eroding profit margins, particularly for large-scale mining operations that require frequent hardware upgrades to stay competitive. Beyond the direct cost increase, higher tariffs could lead to supply shortages, especially if trade restrictions escalate to include outright export bans. While lower energy costs in certain regions of the U.S. could help miners absorb some of the additional financial burden, the overall effect would still be a slowdown in industry growth. Hardware shortages and delays would be another consequence, with the severity depending on the tariff rate. A tariff of 10% or lower would likely have a minimal impact, but at a 25% tariff, delays could extend to 2 to 6 months, slowing U.S. hash rate growth by an estimated 5 to 10%. If tariffs rise beyond 25% and are combined with additional export restrictions, supply disruptions could stretch beyond 6 months, causing the U.S. share of the global Bitcoin hash rate to drop below 30% and shifting mining dominance to other countries. Smaller and mid-sized mining farms would be hit hardest. Hardware costs typically account for 30 to 40% of a mining operation's total expenses, and a 25% tariff could raise overall mining costs by 1 to 2%. If tariffs reach 50 to 60%, costs could increase by 2 to 4%, making it difficult for smaller miners to remain profitable. A 25% tariff could reduce profit margins from 37 to 25%, limiting expansion but keeping operations viable. Now, in my humble opinion, that's not as big of a deal. The thing about cryptocurrency mining, especially stateside, is all about energy. That is why you see obviously huge price markups on miners when the price of Bitcoin is high. And that doesn't nearly affect, of course, operations as much as energy costs. So if the energy cost stateside comes down as significantly as promised by the Trump administration, I would presume it's not near as impactful for the cost of the miners themselves, especially if we are going to see Bitcoin start to go up and up again and hit its kind of second all-time high peak, which I'll talk about here in a little bit too. It does go on to say that, however, at 60%, margins could shrink to single digits, pushing some miners out of business. I don't think that's the case, right? Once again, it comes down to energy costs, in my humble opinion. As small miners struggle or shut down, U.S. Bitcoin mining activity would likely decline, leading to industry consolidation. That's all. Excuse me, that's already happening. That's already been happening for quite some time. And I don't know that. I feel like the bear market impacted that more as far as consolidation to the top. I don't think that it's near as impactful as the bear market was, if that makes sense. Because the thing is like, it really comes down to, once again, that profit margin of cost to mint Bitcoin at the end of the day. Now, I've been looking at cost to mint Bitcoin like with an S19 at stock. And one of the big problems there is that obviously there's firmware to make this better, which you should definitely do. But it's all the way as high as like right now, a cost to mint a Bitcoin at like 7.5 cents to 8 cents. Somewhere around there, like average hosting fees is going to be around 110 to 115,000 on a stock S19. And that's really where you want to see kind of Bitcoin get back up to for the smaller miners. And that's kind of how I see it. I think the bear market, the price of Bitcoin and the cost to mint is more impactful than tariffs on the cost of the mining hardware itself. I think when you're looking at these kind of investing.com articles, you know, Forbes, all these types of financial, I guess, news outlets, is they don't know, I think, the industry quite as intimately as they might like to pretend they do. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Are tariffs as impactful as energy cost and cost to mint Bitcoin? I just don't think it is, especially when we're talking about smaller miners that are getting their equipment hosted, all that sort of thing, right? Let's go on though. It does say that a 25% tariff could cut profit margins by 11 to 15%, forcing some miners out of the market, while a 60% tariff would result in widespread closures. Larger firms have the resources to survive, but would face slower expansion, allowing mining operations in other countries to gain market share. If tariffs remain in the 10 to 15% range, only a small fraction between 1 and 5% of the US hash rate would shift overseas. However, a 25 to 30% tariff could push 7 to 17% of miners to relocate, particularly mid-sized firms unable to compete with larger US operations. And see, I haven't seen, we'll have to see like what they're basing these numbers off of as well. Actually kind of curious if they've listed any resources for this in particular. It doesn't look like it. Yeah. Anyways, so it does go on to say, with smaller operations forced out, the remaining hash rate would likely consolidate among larger mining firms. Like I said, I think that's already happened at this point due to the bear market, not so much tariffs. At tariff levels of 25 to 70%, between 10% and 35% of the US hash rate could end up in the hands of a few dominant players. If mining consolidates under U.S. firms, it could raise concerns over regulatory risks, including increased government oversight and transaction censorship. Tariffs would also impact Bitcoin's network security. A 10 to 15% tariff could reduce the U.S. hash rate by 5 to 10%, lowering the global hash rate by 1.8 to 3.8%. A 25 to 30% tariff could shrink U.S. mining activity by 15 to 25%, cutting global hash rate by up to 9.5%. If tariffs rise to 50 to 70%, the U.S. hash rate could decline by 30 to 50%, reducing global Bitcoin security by up to 19%. I think this is all fear-mongering and BS in my humble opinion, but it says, while Bitcoin's network is designed to be resilient, such a significant reduction in mining power could increase the likelihood of network attacks or regulatory influence. Bullshit. This whole thing's bullshit. There's so much hash rate on the Bitcoin network right now that there's very low chance of any sort of network attacks in a 51% nature, right? It's just not. We could go look at, I guess, what would be the best? Luxor hash rate index, right? And pull that up right now. Oh crap, is it down? Here we go. Where's their, they used to have that site. This is their price data. Ba, ba, ba. Luxor hash rate distribution. I don't remember what they called it. Do you guys remember what they called it? Mining pool data? Is that it? See if that'll load there. In the meantime, Eugene said tariffs as it stands now feels more like unsuccessful marriage, endless mind games with no real movements. Yeah, I mean, that's more of a comment on the nature of it overall. I'm really more curious, how it affects mining, right? So right now we are looking at China with 45.3% of the hash rate and the US at 50% of the, or 40.5% of the hash rate, right? So, really kind of competitive. I guess the argument they're trying to come up with is that China as a country could control over 50% of the hash rate, thereby affecting it from a censorship perspective of China being able to censor transactions. That would mean that they would have to have control over all of the individual miners. Can China coordinate that? I don't know. That seems extremely difficult to control, not only get all over 50% of the hash rate, right? But then also from a government perspective, have full control over every single miner in the country, and then also be able to execute that and point all of that hash rate to a single pool, right? Because you do have multiple Chinese pools that are available, including, of course, right here, you can see Ant Pool via BTC, Spider Pool, SEC Pool, and Binance Pool. In fact, you have more concentrated hash rate on a single pool from the United States with Foundry than you do with any other pool that's here right now. So I think this is a little bit of fear mongering. In my humble opinion, I don't see the network being compromised from a reduction in the hash rate on the state side, nor do I think that we're going to necessarily see that right away, because I got to go look at what the release time schedule for Bitmain miners are, but I don't think there's a significant improvement in hash rate efficiency right now from, Bitmain or WhatsMiner or anything like that would impact it this significantly, right? I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.